Things have certainly escalated very drastically.
This is now officially the worst wildfire season in provincial history.
British Columbia taking the lion's share of the number of wildfires across the country.
Like most of our BC years in review, the focus is on wildfires. But 2023 hit different. It was the most destructive and expensive season on record. With more than 3 million hectares burned in the province, it doubled the previous record set in 2018, costing the province $770 million so far. But that number is expected to reach closer to $1 billion.
It's been unprecedented in way of the amount of area burned, the amount of fire on the landscape.
But the groundwork for the season was actually set back in October 2022.
People were enjoying, extended patio weather and extended golf seasons, but the forests were really lacking the regular rainfall that we typically see in the fall.
And as the drought continued in early spring, the fire started fast and furious. In fact, the province's largest wildfire, the Donnie Creek Fire, started on May 12th.
And that had many of our crews and, some of our senior fire officers that have 30, 35 years of wildfire under their belt, raising their eyebrows.
And with below seasonal rain throughout the summer, there was no end in sight for drought conditions.
We have not experienced this level of widespread drought across the province this early in the year in recent memory.
2/3 of BC's water basins were at a drought level 4 or 5 by the end of July, the most extreme drought rating. No rain, plus lightning storms and strong winds, well, it was a recipe for disaster. Thousands of Kelowna residents only had minutes to evacuate their homes. The Weather Network was on scene in West Kelowna when the McDougall Creek wildfire forced a local state of emergency. Over 10,000 residents were evacuated, several structures lost, and more than 500 firefighters were needed to battle the blaze.
Looks like houses all around mine have gone down, and there's a hot spot 3 houses over from mine.
That same weekend, the province called for a state of emergency in order to get additional support to help fight the fires. And as the wildfire season slowly came to an end, bans were lifted and evacuees able to head home, firefighters already had their mindset on the 2024 wildfire season. And according to them, the outlook is already looking grim.
As we enter the winter season, El Nino is going to be at play. And what that does is it loads the cards in favor of a warm and a dry winter. And there's been a number of studies that have shown that fire seasons coming on the heels of El Nino winters are typically more active, more aggressive. It doesn't look great.
But they say at the end of the day, it will all depend on how much spring rain we get next year.
We've declared a provincial state of emergency to protect the safety, health, and welfare of Albertans.
It literally went from a black cloud a kilometer away to the fire was in our yard in guaranteed less than 5 minutes.
It got a little bigger, and then all of a sudden you're leaving and you were leaving now.
2023 saw more than 2.2 million hectares of forest burned in Alberta, while many of its communities saw their smokiest summers ever. It was a record year by many accounts, but while those impacts are still being assessed, for some, the focus is already shifting to 2024.
Absolutely, everybody is on edge.
Residents of Yellowhead County are feeling anxious. They were among the roughly 38,000 Albertans evacuated throughout the summer, many having to leave their homes more than once. County Mayor Wade Williams says that community is still rebuilding, not only physically after losing 36 homes, but mentally as well.
I never, ever, ever want to experience something that we went through. It was horrible, to say the least.
But fears are mounting that the conditions that fanned those flames in 2023 could repeat. A warmer, drier, earlier than normal spring that El Nino weather patterns make more likely than not to occur again. And if multiple large fires spring up simultaneously in early spring, Alberta could be in for another long haul.
But the real tell is going to be how much snow we get, how much snow sticks around, and the kind of precipitation we get in that window between, let's say, the back 2 weeks of March and through the month of April.
Alberta Wildfire says winter snowpack will be key in shaping next year's wildfire season, as will preventative measures like controlled burns should similar conditions arise. The province, meanwhile, plans to release the full cost of the season in the spring, but after extending firefighting hours, increasing surveillance, and dedicating $175 million in disaster relief alone, Albertans can expect a big bill.
Every direction we turned, we had more fires starting. It was a firefight I never want to see again.
All right, got some big hail here. Yeah, here we go. Ow. I'd say dime size to quarter size.
Storm chaser Mark Robinson has been chasing storms for years here at the Weather Network, but 2023 was particularly odd.
That's the first line through. Not as strong as I feared it might have been.
Quality versus quantity thing. We had a lot of tornadoes, a lot of thunderstorms, but they were all very messy, hard to see. I was right beside a tornado and literally did not see it.
I lost you.
As Mark faced storm chasing challenges across Ontario, the story took a turn from tornadoes to wildfire smoke.
Canada may be seeing our worst wildfire season ever on record.
Smoke traveled across the Canadian skies, impacting Ontario.
We woke up to the highest air quality health index we could give a region.
Could the smoke be linked to storm energy?
All the smoke blowing to the east certainly is something that could cut down on the amount of heat from the sun getting down to the ground and being able to generate thunderstorms.
The smoke just killed off the energy for the storms.
There was a moment in 2023, you were in Ottawa, I was in Oshawa.
Yes.
And we were actually both reporting on the smoke.
The air quality here in Ottawa is just as awful, I think, as I've ever experienced. I remember driving out of Toronto when I was just north of Oshawa when I first started smelling the smoke.
You almost can taste it on your tongue. It's like soot on your tongue. Toronto and Ottawa had the worst air quality in the world at one point.
And it was so bad that I was looking across the river into Gatineau and you literally couldn't see across the river, and I was standing on Parliament Hill.
I just remember the sky being completely orange at one point.
That week right then was just, everything was perfect to pump that smoke down into very populated areas. And I think that's what got everybody suddenly saying, oh my goodness, this happens, and you have to say, yeah, it happens every year, but normally that smoke is being sort of cranked out towards to Greenland.
The helicopters here have been using the open road as a place to land and fuel up.
The biggest weather story of 2023 in Nova Scotia was a lack of rain in the early spring, which led to the most devastating wildfire season the province has ever seen.
And it's too dangerous.
More than 25,000 hectares of land were burned and over 200 homes destroyed. Over 150 of those homes burned on May 28th when a fire spread rapidly just outside Halifax in Tantallon.
Chief strategy to secure the perimeter of this fire was to bring in a large volume of heavy equipment and to dig down and scrape away the soil right down to mineral soil so there's nothing left to build.
This happened simultaneously as homes were being lost to the Barrington Lake wildfire in Shelburne County. It came under control on June 13th, but not before burning 23,525 hectares, about 235 square kilometers. The largest fire Nova Scotia has ever seen. The low rainfall in the spring meant a low amount of moisture in the ground and in the trees. Forest Protections Manager Scott Tingley says the foliar moisture content of the trees is at its lowest around the end of May, just before the green-up, and last spring's low rainfall meant a low amount of moisture in the ground as well.
Extraordinary weather conditions, the spring dip, and then unfortunately we had ignitions, and we had very, very dry weather, for that week of kind of May 28th to early June. All those things lined up, unfortunately, this year.
Support was sent from all the Atlantic provinces with fixed-wing air bombers coming from Newfoundland and New Brunswick. A 17-person crew even came up from New England to help battle the blazes. The largest number of homes were lost in the Tantallon area shortly after the fire broke out.
It started basically in the residential area. So there were homes involved in the fire very, very early on, within probably minutes. Most of the damage that occurred to homes and property was within about a 6 to 8 hour span of that first evening on May 28th.
It's not just the people, it's the animals as well.
During the evacuation, Lisa Parsons had to return on foot to her doggy daycare to evacuate 18 dogs.
And I ran through the bushes the whole way from Larry Utek to Pampered Paws Inn. To then get the dogs.
Communities near the path of the Barrington Lake fire that were spared from the flames still had to contend with the smoke.
Air quality out there for the last several days has been unreal, horrible. It's like a snowstorm out there with the ash in the air that you can't see the sky.
A province-wide burn ban announced May 29th lasted until the fire was under control. Back in Tantallon, plans for new roads that would allow for alternate evacuation routes from the suburbs are now being discussed as a result of the devastating wildfires.
It looked like there was a fireworks show going off for about 4 or 5 hours. House shaking, crystal rattling all night long. We got about 4 feet of water in our basement.
In a cruel twist of fate, all of the rain that Nova Scotians so desperately needed during the record-setting fire season came too late and all at once on a summer's evening on July 21st. It was the result of training thunderstorms which hovered over the province, dropping more than 250 millimeters of rain in areas hardest hit in 24 hours.
One of the biggest concerns was always, what if this happens in a city? And it just wasn't Halifax and the HRM, but it was a large area. This certainly though ranks as one of the highest impact flash floods in Canadian history.
The body of a 52-year-old Windsor man who had been reported missing was located by searchers in the primary search area.
4 people, including 2 6-year-old children, were killed after becoming stranded in vehicles due to rapidly rising water.
It's difficult to comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy and the loss that we're feeling.
The province reported 19 bridges needed minor repairs, while 29 bridges needed more extensive repairs as a result of the flooding. Another 7 bridges needed to be replaced. There were nearly 500 sections of damaged paved and gravel roads and 60 road shoulders that had to be quickly repaired by crews to keep traffic flowing, all a result of training thunderstorms.
The storms just keep coming, same place, same place, same place for about 5 to 7 hours, and that's what did the damage in places like Bedford. And look at these totals. I mean, potentially over 300 millimeters. Even if we didn't measure that by a station, we're pretty confident there was well over 250 in some areas.
And that's a summer's worth of rain. That's a June, July, and August. That's tough to really wrap your head around these rainfall totals, and we can zoom right in to the Halifax region, and some of these totals are well over 200 millimeters.
We can rebuild roads and bridges and buildings, but we can't bring people back. And the legacy for these floods will be the incredibly tragic loss of life.